When was the last time you genuinely felt like you truly belong somewhere?
You're now listening to the Student of Life podcast.
Hi, y'all. Trey here, sitting for another week with the Twisted Tea drinking, two-time amateur award winning yodeler, Tim.
Hello, everyone.
And that was not his award winning yodel.
No,
Because I've heard it. I've heard it. And his award winning yodel will put all other yodelers to shame. Okay, Tim, I'm going to have to admit something. And, it's really not to you, but to our listeners and viewers out there. Student of Life is definitely an authentic company. And yes, I'm going to talk about ourselves for a little bit here, because here's the truth. This is our third attempt at recording this episode. We are not without any fault. We deal with technical difficulties. We're honest and authentic, right? And I will say Johnny V, the one and only, has been with us on the other two times that we've recorded, but we definitely had some technical difficulties, but we are still showing up, and we're going to make sure that we hit our points because we want to connect and we're building a sense of community here. So,
yes.
Tim, are you ready to dive into this for a third time?
I am.
Are you? Because I know we touched on some pretty,
Yeah, I am.
deep and impactful topics, when we were going over this episode. So you said you're all ready, right?
My other producer says yes. I'm ready to go.
All right. You know what? I'm going to take the cue from your producer because my producer is definitely on a hiatus. And Tim, we were talking about community, and how it just seemed as if it was a lot stronger when we were younger. In my opinion, it just seemed that way, right? Let me ask you, I mean, did it seem like there were a lot more resources or organizations that were out there when you were younger versus today?
I don't know if the resources, there were more so of those back then, but I think you look at it so from a childhood standpoint. I remember I was constantly involved in sports or after school activities. Neighborhoods were always having, gatherings. So it always seemed like every weekend or every week there was something going on throughout, the entire year. Being from Minnesota, the winter time's a little different. You're a little bit more limited with that, but I I feel like there is a little bit of a drop in overall sense of the community aspect, just my short time living here even. So I do think it's kind of decreased on what I've seen and what I've experienced over, the last decade, if not more.
And when you say your short time of living here, do you mean on this earth? Because, relatively, we have been here for a relatively short amount of time, right? Are you talking about this world? Are you talking about the United
So
States of America?
the great state of Ohio, great state of Ohio.
There it is. There it is. Okay, I had to pull it out of you. Like
Y-
where's here?
That's true. It'd be there or over there, but it's right here.
You know, it's right here, right there, actually, because I'm not there and you're not here. And, it's kind of a weird thing to say here, there, and everywhere, right? I'm here and the I won't call it the great state. And the only reason why I'm not going to call it the great state of California is because I'm not from California, but it is a state. And I know that people that were born here probably think it's the great state of California. Me personally, Ohio is the great state of Ohio. Anyway, moving forward, you know, so the short amount of time that you've been there, you haven't seen as many organizations. Are you saying for children or are you saying for like yourself?
Adults, children, neighborhoods. I think the big thing in neighborhoods, growing up and even into early adulthood, there was always stuff. There were always, big gatherings, whether it was, a festival or, some sort of like small thing that occurred out there. But even like from an actual like neighborhood standpoint, like everyone got together. Like you'd have, Fourth of July or Memorial Day, these different holidays, or even just on the weekends alone, you'd have the neighbors. We lived in a cul-de-sac, so we would all get together in the summertime and, swap out, cooking out, or, if someone had a pool, would go over there and enjoy, some time of that. So it just doesn't seem as prevalent, and I don't know if it's just the areas that I've lived in here in Ohio over time that I haven't been exposed to it a whole lot. But even I think on the adult aspect of it, I think there's been a decline of, those big social groups and gatherings that, used to have and used to see all the time.
Yeah. So I will say, like, even because I grew up in Ohio, born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, all of my family, a good majority of my family, not all. I don't want to say all my family is in Ohio, but the bulk of my family on my mother and my father's side are still in Ohio. And I remember, growing up and there being things like, the Boys and Girls Club after school, we would go there, right after school, you know, hey, something for us to do, especially during the summertime, and we would do that. I'm not even sure if that is a major organization as it used to be, like something that kids really aspired to try to go to. I know there's the YMCA that's out there, but even that, I mean, is that really something that parents really take their kids to nowadays, or that you hear them talking about, like after school events and stuff?
So for me personally, both our kids go to the Y. They've taken swim lessons there. They've done, athletic type of things throughout the year there. I will say that I did see a pretty large group of the Boys and Girls Club at the Dayton Draken Stadium, I believe a weekend or two ago. So there was a huge, group of that, but that was the first time I've really seen them out and about or really kind of heard about it. But yeah, around here, unless something's really advertised or, it's a word of mouth from other parents or other people, yeah, I don't see it. I see kids kind of just out and about on their own and instead of, troving around in large groups like we used to when I was growing up.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it's just curious to me, right? And, going back to, just that sense of community, the military and the brotherhood and sisterhood that we had there in the military, right? Even even that seems to be just degraded just a little bit, but I mean, you have a stronger sense of community because of those military related facets, right? You have all different walks of life that are all brought in together to work towards a common goal, the mission itself, mission focused, mission driven. And I do think that the Navy had a stronger sense of community than the Air Force. Okay, here we go. Let's fight. I know I'm going to have someone who's going to be like, oh, no, the Air Force was so much better. Yes, you guys had better facilities, but we had better community. Would you agree or disagree with that, Tim?
So, being as an I only came from the Air Force, I know you had a different experience of multiple branches. Granted, you had active duty Navy, and then we're over into the only the reserve portion of the Air Force. I came from active duty Air Force, went over to the reserves. I will say, from an active duty Air Force standpoint, there was a huge sense in community, at least like the time that I was in. I don't know how it is now because I haven't really spoken to a lot of them. But I think the reserve and the guard, I think it makes a huge difference because these are people that have their regular jobs Monday through Friday throughout the week. And then once a month, they come together for, a 72-hour period to do whatever during a drill weekend. And then they leave and they go back to, wherever it is. We had some that were from out of state or just out of the local area. So they're just coming there to do their thing, get their points and their time and move on. Active duty, you're around each other constantly. Whether you're working a 6 on 3 off schedule or, whatever your hours you're working, you deploy together, you're on that base, if you're in the dorms or so. I think from my perspective, active duty Air Force, there's a lot bigger of a sense of kind of that camaraderie in the community.
Mm.
Reserve and Guard, not as much, at least from what I experienced in the time that I was in over there.
Hmm.
But I always, assumed looking from the outside for the Navy, you guys are on ships, out at sea, you guys are on subs, it's different than us who are, on a landlocked base all the time and have the freedom to kind of go do a lot more things versus you guys that are out in the middle of the ocean for, months up to a year at a time. So,
And having to depend on one another. So,
yeah,
so yeah, maybe it's all about perspective and the position that you're put in. You know, I'm glad to have this conversation with you in regards to the difference between, active duty side of the Air Force, right? And then also the reserve side, because that's something that most people don't really think about is that, it's only, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out the year, really, or if you have, other types of workups or orders that gets cut or whatever. So pretty much you have been thinking about self. Anyway, I don't want to dive into it because I'm not trying to disparage any one side, of either branch or anything like that. It was just my experience, right? And it is one team, one fight, and the best branch is the Navy. Yes, yes, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm putting it out there in the Navy. You can sell the seven C's in
you
the
beat me
Navy.
to it. Thank you.
I have to do that because there's so many Navy jokes out there. You have to have fun with it and make light of it. But getting back to this whole point, where I'm saying that organizations in that sense of community and camaraderie, it really does feel like it's been degraded a little bit or degraded, if that's a better term to use, even though it's like we're so much more connected. I just feel like everyone feels, or at least I feel like we're more isolated inside of our own silos than being connected, even though we're super
Mm.
connected with social media and such, right? How does that happen? And how can we get over that feeling of being isolated? We're going to talk about this deeper. We're definitely going to jump into it and have an honest conversation in the full package because, I mean, I know you have some thoughts on it, Tim. I know
No,
you do.
absolutely. Yep.
I mean, we talk about this pretty much all the time. I know you do. This whole online community versus real life relationships. One thing I notice right now is that you're wearing a shirt that I know was from a real life, connected community that's out
Yeah.
there in the cigar community. You might have, dressed up very fancy with that same shirt at the Great Smoke in Florida. You might have done it. I don't know. Maybe you could tell me more about that shirt. I know I've seen it before.
I could maybe fill you in a little bit later.
Okay. And, I'm wearing something from, the area that I'm currently in right now. We're not sponsored by, the Padres, but it is a Padres jersey because I'm here in San Diego and I have to support the community. And like I said, we're going to talk more and dive deeper in how we can, in my opinion, break this gridlock. So I do want to try something a little bit different with you, Tim. Okay. I'm going to give a rapid fire answer as why you think community is dying. Okay. And I want you to tell me which one do you feel personally is more at fault, or if none of them are at fault, just give me a quick reason why. Okay. Do you think that it's technology, politics, work culture, or individualism?
Individualism.
Mm, okay. Okay. Yep. We're going to dive into that because I think I have a different take on it. And, you know, I like to take this time to read a comment from one of our full package members. And this one comes by the way of Patreon from Crit G20, who says, I'm enjoying the chat so far. It's like guys' night, but asking the hard questions. Let's normalize this. Keep this going. And that's the thing. You know, we are more connected now than ever in history. And somehow, Sorry about that. Sometimes. Sometimes and somehow, we definitely feel a little bit lonelier. And, we're going to dive into why I think that is and why you might think it is and how we might be able to overcome it. And that's going to be in the full package, which is now up and available on Patreon. We'll be talking about this and our perspectives. And if you have some thoughts out there, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you haven't already done so, feel free to hit those like, subscribe, notification bell, and also share it with someone who you believe will benefit in these conversations. But let's continue to learn, grow, and live together. Tim, do you have anything else to say before we transition?
Nope. We'll see you guys on the other side.
See you guys on the other side.